Welcome to Sounds of Resistance channel. The progress of the Ukrainian-Russian war in favor of the Ukrainian heroes pushed the Russian administration to take very serious and risky decisions. Especially during the 2-month period of the war, the Russian army was stuck like a mouse on the territory of Ukraine. Russian troops flee from where they see Ukrainian soldiers and are deployed to different places, and this situation has been going on for a long time. The interesting thing is that while the Russian army is in such a bad situation on Ukrainian soil, leader Vladimir Putin is taking steps to make the course of the war much more difficult. Russian President Vladimir Putin decided to officially recognize the fake referendums held in Ukraine's Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia regions on September 23 to 27. This world-shattering dirty game and despicable decision will certainly intensify the moves to be made in all areas against Russia, and this risky dice of Putin may burst in his face. President Vladimir Putin signed a decree officially recognizing Ukraine's 2 regions, Zaporizhia and Kherson, as independent states after fake referendums. President Putin has always argued that so-called disputed territories in eastern Ukraine, such as Luhansk and Donetsk, should belong to Russia or be independent states. The signing of the decree is the final stage of the highly controversial annexation process, in which undemocratic and blank votes are counted without being read to provide support for Russia's plan. The Russian president is expected to hold an official signing ceremony to annex more territories on Friday and make an important speech in the Kremlin, although Russia does not fully control any of the 4 regions. The evening will see a celebratory concert, with a stage built in Moscow's Red Square and billboards stating that the 4 regions are part of Russia. It seems that Russia has been determined to annex 4 regions of eastern Ukraine since the conflict began in February. However, this can have serious consequences for them. The Russian people are already in revolt, and the heavy attack of Ukraine and heavy Western sanctions that will follow after these decisions may make Putin and the Russian people regret it. In addition, the Russian leader Vladimir Putin's declaration of mobilization across the country, which took all of Russia under his influence, ignited the fire that was already burning in Russia. After Putin's mobilization order, there was nothing left for order in Russia. As soon as the Russian local people heard of the mobilization, they sought ways to leave Russia. In general, no one in Russia is happy with the mobilization decision. Just hours after Putin announced the mobilization on Russian television, representatives of airline companies and train ticket outlets reported that their tickets were starting to run out. People in Russia are now aware of all these events. The majority of Russian citizens do not want to die in Ukraine, so they try every possible way. Against Russian leader Vladimir Putin, local Russian people chanted anti-mobilization slogans on the streets of Russia for days. The anti-war Russian citizens who moaned in the streets of Russia with banners in their hands showed their reactions against Putin and his administration without hesitation. The Russian leader, on the other hand, without pitying even the citizens of his own country, had all of the Russian citizens who participated in the protests taken into custody. It is among the allegations that the arrested Russian citizens were tortured when they were taken to the police station. The biggest rebellion against the mobilization declared by Vladimir Putin came from a Russian citizen living in Ryazan. The action of the Russian citizen, who shuddered by those who saw it, took place at the Ryazan bus stops. The Russian man, who shouted that he was fed up with Putin's rule and would not go to war in Ukraine, set himself on fire. You heard it. A Russian citizen took his own life to oppose the oppressive and tyrannical power of leader Putin. Russian leader Vladimir Putin, whose hand is a bit more bloody, will cost the lives of many more people. How many more victims will the Russian leader cause? After the mobilization decision in Russia, a period of serious chaos broke out. Streets, avenues, public buildings, civic businesses, everywhere in Russia are now the same. In these places we have mentioned, only restlessness prevails. If there's a citizen who sets himself on fire and gives up his life against the leader of a country and only wants to die to get rid of his power, we ask you to just turn around and think. How can one person get things so out of hand? How can he be so enslaved by his ego? A vivid example of these questions we are asking is still in Moscow, still at the head of Russia, continuing its hysterical policies. The situation of the Russian citizen who tried to set himself on fire and kill himself is quite serious. It is known that the Russian man who tried to burn himself burned 90% of his body. Although this protest may seem like a small action by one person, it is actually a source of embarrassment for Russia. On the world stage, Russia will always continue to be known in this way. In other words, a Russia that hates its leader and the policies pursued by its leader, nothing more. According to Vladimir Putin's mobilization decree, about 300,000 Russian citizens will join the army. A large part of the Russian local people who hear about this item continue to resort to different methods due to uneasiness. One of the Russian locals who took life-threatening risks, like the Russian man who tried to set himself on fire, also targeted the Russian military registration office this time. On the night of the day the mobilization was announced, dozens of Russian military registration offices were set on fire, especially in St. Petersburg in Russia. Now the scene of the crime is the Siberian region, where one of the Russian military registration offices is located. A military commissar in the Russian military registration office in Siberia, where tensions were rising, responsible for overseeing the mobilization criteria, was shot by a Russian citizen who was anti-mobilization and did not want to participate in the war in Ukraine. It was reported that the condition of the military commissar who collapsed to the ground in blood was serious. The identity of the person who shot the military commissar has still not been determined. The Russian citizen who shot the military commissar only said no to mobilization and tried to get away from the scene. That's how dire the situation in Russia is. The uprisings against the Russian leader Vladimir Putin have now gone beyond the borders of Russia. Russia's federal republics are among those who oppose mobilization. In Dagestan, where the most important riots took place, a middle-aged man lay on the asphalt on the bridge on the connecting road of the Southern Highway and waited there for hours. The citizens of Dagestan, who prepared an interesting protest action, drew the attention of the people around. The citizen of Dagestan lying on the bridge road shouted he opposed the mobilization and did not want to die in Ukraine. The mobilization decision in Russia, which received reactions from many countries of the world, especially the mobilization decree for the conscription of Russian citizens who did not meet the military service criteria, was often criticized. While the tension in Russia never subsided, a huge scandal took place in the Russian media. The announcer who made a news program called Evening with Vladimir Solovyov in Russian state television made shocking words. Solovyov's guest this week was Margarita Simonyan. While the two were talking about the announced mobilization in Russia, Solovyov demanded that a conscription officers be executed or sent to the front. Solovyov, who disapproved of Putin's mobilization decision and claimed that the war in Ukraine only harmed the Russians, upset all the Russian media with these statements. Describing all Russian soldiers who went to fight for Russia to Ukraine as Putin's victims, Solovyov officially encouraged someone to be killed on live broadcast. Immediately after Solovyov's statements, the expected came true and gunshots were heard from another Russian military register office. A Russian youth, influenced by Solovyov's statements, shot a Russian military commissar working in the military registry office. It was reported that the life-threatening condition of the military commissar who was shot continued. The Russian teenager who pulled the trigger was caught by the security forces. The Russian youth who carried out the attack expressed his thoughts with the words, "No to mobilization" and "We do not want Putin's power anymore. There is no mobilization. Everyone should disperse to their homes," and then carried out the attack. If the situation continues in the same way in Russia, the uprisings against Putin will increase. And even in Russia, it is claimed that there will be a revolutionary movement initiated by the people as whole due to Putin's political policies that upset the balance. Don't forget to follow us. Thanks for watching.